Shabbat Shalom. This week, as we know, people all around the world are making and marking time anew, committing to new resolutions, starting new rituals, new habits, and seeking a fresh start in general. And this makes total sense because, of course, the whole world knows that in this week's Torah portion, God commands the people to start a calendar. I'm sure that's also why I'm getting all these Facebook ads for joining a gym. In Parshat Bo, which we read this week, toward the end of the Passover story, even before the Israelites leave Egypt, the people receive their very first laws in the Torah, beginning with the laws for marking time. This month shall mark for you the beginning of the months, we read. It shall be the first of the months of the year for you. Never mind that we don't actually observe Rosh Hashanah in springtime, the Torah makes it clear that Passover is undeniably connected to marking time. The Italian sage Ovadia Sforno points out that instituting a calendar is essential for a newly free people. In his words, a new calendar is by way of contrast to the years when they were enslaved, when they had no control over their time or timetable at all. Calendars, in general, are expressions of power, and instituting an Israelite calendar was a way of having agency in their own self-governance. Many of us intuitively understand the ways in which time itself is powerful, and a calendar can feel glorious or burdensome depending on how much of it you control. Our calendars bind us to certain ways of being. The fiscal calendar, the school year, the sequence of time by which we pay our taxes or vote in elections. Not to mention the more mundane timetables of delayed subways or canceled flights when our impotence is cast into relief. Surely the latter was top of mind for many of us, most recently given the spread of Omicron. And this week, I'm aware of time as it relates to the pandemic in other ways. Entering a third calendar year of COVID, sure, but these days, we're yet again focused on the time it takes to quarantine, which of course seems to differ depending on the expert in charge. Multiply that by every person in our lives whom we see regularly that we love. In each of these different ways, time is a function of freedom and lack thereof. And the freedom that comes from charting time in the ways that one wants is an element of pandemic reality that many of us don't often think about, when other benchmarks are much more obvious. By now, we spent a lot of time meditating on the physical freedoms that the pandemic has limited. Freedom to leave our homes, to see a loved one, to host a gathering, and so on. But among the important freedoms that has been curbed is simply the freedom to own our own schedules without the constant threat of last-minute changes, which are yet again prevalent in the era of Omicron. Maybe it's just that a new secular year is typically a time filled with enthusiasm and resolutions, but this week, I have to be honest, I'm feeling this deeply, the ways in which time is not in my control. In our tradition, time is not just what humans typically experience as the progress of events, a sequence from past to present to future. The Jewish aspect, I can say for sure, is something else. We experience the present as a way of reliving the past and co-creating a future with God all at once. And this week's Torah portion is maybe the best example we have for a holiday, Passover, reminding us of our past. But it's not the past for past's sake. NYU professor Jeffrey Rubenstein teaches that our holidays are not merely the remembrance of Jewish history, but the script of a cyclical drama that plays out each year. Every single thing that happens in the Jewish calendar locates us in relationship to our past and to each other, as together we build a future. But importantly, as Rubenstein notes, it is a script. There are certain things that we're supposed to do as we relive the past while creating a future. If starting a calendar is the first commandment in this parsha, there are no less than 19 others, according to Maimonides' count. Rituals that are necessary for experiencing time as a Jew. The Torah details the sacrifice of the Paschal lamb, describing the lamb and how to cook it and how to serve it and what to wear when you eat it. And the chapter continues with even further laws of Passover. The 13th century guide to the commandments known as Sefer HaChinuch hones in on this chapter of laws. It points out that this is the first moment when Israel coheres as a people. And because the Exodus is the crucible in which the people's relationship with God is forged, repeating the story is by itself not enough. In addition to telling the story, remembering the Exodus requires repeated actions over and over again. This, the anonymous author says, explains the large number of precepts connected with the commemoration of the miracle of Egypt. The various laws about the Paschal lamb, matzah, and removing chametz, among others, doing those sorts of things help to cement memory, cement the specific memory of that particular time. According to Sefer HaChinuch, this principle is applicable to so many mitzvot. By doing rituals, we begin to feel a certain way. By doing, we come to believing, remembering the Exodus, but maybe even feeling free. By performing rituals, we come to understand our agency. Over the past 2 years, many in this community have reflected on the importance of Shabbat or other rituals in making them feel grounded during such a confusing time. And as we move through this most recent surge with its attendant canceled plans, I want to pose a question to you to consider throughout the next week or weeks, or hopefully not too much longer than that. What are the rituals that we need to get through this surge of the virus? The start of 2022 already feels bumpy for so many reasons. So what are the behaviors that we can control when so much feels out of our hands? Trying out new hobbies, taking a daily walk, checking in with someone that we love. These are the things we learned to do 2 years ago. More importantly and differently now, what are the behaviors in time that we can control? Participating in Shabbat services is a good one, and please keep doing that, as is observing other holidays like Tu B'Shvat, which is just next week or weekend. Maybe it's planning something a week from now that you can do no matter what, ordering from a special restaurant or making an unusual recipe or anything else to make a certain date feel celebratory. My hope for all of us is that we are patient with ourselves as we yet again try on new rituals, specifically those focused on regaining our agency of time. As we give it our best shot, I pray that we are open to the belief that we are freer than we think. And in 2022, this time, to really become free. Shabbat Shalom.